30-second video. I checked them often enough. There was enough space on the card to keep a couple weeks of videos, and I would check them about once a week. Pull the videos in case a camera got stolen. Instead of leaving it out for a month, coming back and checking it, it's gone. I just lost a month worth of data, which that happened to me last year. Someone stole one of my cameras, so I had to keep checking them, so I had something. Next slide. I put the cameras up in these locations again where Paul Freeman had notated he found tracks, where he found evidence. I set them up facing somewhat southerly position to try to mitigate the number of false triggers that the sun traversing the sky can cause. Set them up so that there's nothing in the field of view of the camera that might trigger it if the wind starts blowing. Put it on a sturdy tree. Again, the wind will move the tree and the camera starts recording. And you might have 100 videos of a tree blowing in. So those things I think about. They were deployed high enough off the ground in hopes of capturing the target species in the Sasquatch, but also low enough where I could get other wildlife that was out there. I would see what was passing through these areas where I had the camera focused, mountain lions, bear, and deer. They were deployed in a grid pattern. There's a map I'll show you. So that was a deliberate deployment of the cameras, which covered that 24 square kilometer area that I was monitoring. And then I calibrated them. And I'll talk about that specifically, what I mean. Next slide, please. That's a map. I don't know how well you can see that. That red area is the watershed. You're not allowed to go in there. There are signs everywhere to keep out. They will put you in prison or jail. They will fine you. I think it's like $5,000 up to $5,000. They don't want anybody in there. It was established in 1918. The idea is to protect the water that goes to Walla Walla. Now, there are some people that think they don't want anybody in there because they know Sasquatch is in there. I know it was established in 1918, and I don't think anybody was thinking about Bigfoot back then. So I think it was established for the reasons they say. But you're not allowed to go in there. That orange line going up and down, that's Kendall Skyline Road, and that white dot in cell 3 there, that's where my camp was. But those squares represent the area covered by either cameras, recorders, or track and sign surveys, or all three. So those were the areas I was concentrating my efforts on the ground to look for evidence. Next slide, please. And I mentioned calibrating the cameras. When I set them up, I didn't time stamp them, because I've had cameras reset themselves, and then they reset themselves back to the factory settings. The dates are all wrong, the times are all wrong. So if I do that, I can figure out, if that does happen, I can figure out, okay, this video here says a different date than it's 2015. I can figure out when the video was. Does that make sense? You can figure out when the video was made. So I do that. Next slide. Now, when I set the cameras up, I run out of tape measure about 10 meters. With that meter stick, it's 1 meter long, I sit at the 1 meter line in front of the camera. It's making video. I'll go back to the 2nd meter line, the 3rd, all the way out to the 10th. Next video, or next slide, please. Then I do it from side to side within field of view of the camera. Now what that accomplishes is if something walks through there, because I have scale already made, I can calculate how big the animal is that just walked through there. So if there was a Sasquatch, I might be able to prove that whatever that is not me in a costume, because I'm not 8 feet tall. And I can prove that this thing is 8 feet tall. Next slide. That's me doing the other side. Next slide. And would you play that? Yeah, that couldn't have been set up better. That cat walked right where I wanted it to. Okay, next one. Now the reason I showed that is because where I did that calibration, it's that camera. Even though it's at night, you can see that it's the same camera that made that video. So this is an example of calculating the size of whatever crosses in front of your camera. It's called calibration factor. You take the actual length of that meter stick. That's a known length. It's 1 meter. You know that. The projected length of the calibration stick is the length of the stick on your computer screen. The measurement you get when you just put a ruler up on the computer screen. I got 55 millimeters. You divide the actual length by the projected length, and it gives you 0.01 meters. Then on the cat, I want to know how tall that cat is. So that red line represents the bottom of that cat's paw up to its shoulder. I measure that length the same way I did the meter stick on there, with a little ruler. And I got 32 millimeters. Well, you take 32 millimeters, you multiply that by 0.018. And then this thing, you get 0.576 meters or 22.7 inches. So that cat at the shoulder is 22.7 inches tall. And I know that because I calibrated the camera. If that had been something more interesting, like a Sasquatch, I'd be able to tell you how wide it was. I'd be able to tell you how tall it was. And that's important, because that's the kind of data you want to include with whatever you're doing. Next slide, please. I discussed that. All right, next one. I skipped ahead and talked about that. All right, track and sign surveys. Talk about what I was doing in terms of that. And in this picture here, this up in the upper right-hand corner, that's a mountain lion track. That's the track of the mountain lion that was just in the video. The one next to it is a wolf track. That particular morning, we had 4 wolves. 4 wolves came down the road in the opposite direction a mountain lion walked that same night. So I got a picture of those 2 tracks next to each other, and I thought that was pretty cool. Next slide, please. Right, the way you measure tracks, the way I measure tracks. It sounds easy. It sounds foolproof, right? There's a track, you throw a ruler down, it's this wide, it's this long. It's more complicated than that. 2 fellas, they were mountain lion researchers in California. They had an issue. If a cat is walking on, say, a dusty road, like that picture I showed you before, and then it crosses into deep mud, those tracks change size. The tracks in the deep mud look bigger than the ones in the dust. Can you guys imagine that? They're the same size, the same cat. They can't be bigger. So they developed the minimum outline method. You measure the floor of the track, this bottom part here, because that's the true size of the track. That's the minimum outline. The line up there on the horizon or plane, that's the variable outline. That line, that shape of the track's going to change depending on what the animal's walking in. If you get out of a pool and walk on the concrete, that represents the true size of your foot. If you walk in mud, I might think your foot's 2 or 3 inches longer and 2 or 3 inches wider, but it can't be. So that's how I would measure a Sasquatch track if I found one. And I'd be getting the true size of the track. Next slide, please. And here's an example. You imagine that black outline, say that track's in mud, say that's 2 inches deep. You don't measure from the very edge of the black outline to the very edge of the black outline. You measure that white part inside, across the top of the forefoot, the rear foot or heel, and then the length. So can you see how if you measure that track wrong, it's going to look bigger. You're going to think it's 18 inches. It's not. It's 16. It's 16 and a half inches. So in an effort to be accurate and collect good data, I investigate techniques like this and try to apply them to what I'm doing. You don't have to invent anything new. These techniques already exist. People have been studying mountain lions, bears, all those sorts of animals for years. I don't see why it should be any different with a Sasquatch. I have no reason to believe that you cannot apply these kinds of techniques to a Sasquatch. So that's why I personally, again, have no reason to believe that they can, like I Dream the Genie, disappear. I've got no reason to think that. Orangutans don't do it. Gorillas don't do it. Orangutan doesn't use a portal to get where he wants to go. He swings around. Right? I imagine Bigfoot walks to where he wants to go. You'd probably think you were stupid. I don't teleport. Who told you that? Next slide, please. When I was out there, I did a track experiment. That's my foot, before anybody gets excited. That's how it's made. I made 2 tracks. July 1st, took my boot off and stepped in the mud. I wanted to know how long does a track persist out there. So if I found something, I might be able to age it. I'd have an idea when the track maker laid that track down. The next picture here was taken on August 28th. So that track is 59 days old, the next picture. It looks pretty good, doesn't it? It's 2 months old. And you can clearly tell what it is. It's not eroded, it's not destroyed, it doesn't hardly rain out there. Actually, the last couple days before I passed this, we got 1.03 inches of rain. That's the most I've ever seen it rain out there. It rained all that day and all that rain. My truck was leaking, but I thought, well, it's good for my experiment, so for science, also. Next slide, please. You can you guys see the ridge detail in that second picture? Looks like your fingerprints, bottom of your feet have them too. That mud registered that really well. It took tracks really well. That was the first day. Next slide. Now, at day 59, most of the ridge detail is gone, but you can still see, can you see a remnant of it? Up there next to that crack in the track? There's still ridge detail there after 59 days and several rains. So what I did, next slide please, is I cast my own tracks because I wanted to see, can I capture this ridge detail? Could a Sasquatch leave a track 3 months ago? Have ridge detail on it. Could I cast it and record it so someone like a Dr. Meldrum could look at it and examine it? Next slide, please. So last night, I found a sweet lady, the clerk. I told her I have a track, I need to spray mud off it, I need a hose. And she said, oh, I don't know where a hose is. She helped me out, we found a hose, I sprayed it off. So that's the resulting cast. And you can see the ridge detail there, the next picture. Again, I think that's pretty amazing. If I did this in Georgia, that track wouldn't last a week. It constantly rains there. Next slide, please. So that was an example of the track and sign survey. And the experiments I do out there just to stay in practice. I'm not saving all my plaster for Sasquatch track, which I may never find. I cast anything I find out there. It's good to stay in practice, because when it comes to a Sasquatch track, I don't want to screw that up. That'll probably be my first and only chance to get it right. So I also set up automated recorders. Next slide. They look like that. They're by Wildlife Acoustics. They're like $900 a piece. But you can program them to record when you want them to shut off when you want them to. They'll hold over 2 terabytes of data. You can set them up, depending on how you program them. Those things will last for 2 months on 4D batteries. And they'll go on every night. They're doing their job. So instead of trying to make something that probably won't work, I just said, screw it, I'm buying something that I know does. Go ahead, go to the next slide. This looks confusing. I just put this up here to show you. This is a program. You can program the schedule that you want this thing to have using this program here on your computer. Then you just upload it onto the recorder, and it's done. Then you set it up, and it goes to work for you. They're real easy to use. Next slide. Weather data. Weather was important to me, particularly because I was doing that track experiment. I needed to know not just when it rained, I can tell by looking up, but I want to know how much it's raining. I want to know what is the temperature out there. I want to know the humidity. I want to know the wind speed, the wind direction. So I set these things up. It's a rain gauge and a little Kestrel weather meter. I set that thing, both of those up, and they ran the whole time. Every hour, the Kestrel would take measurements of all the things that I mentioned. And then if it rained, it'd fill up my little rain gauge, and I could go out and I could read it, and I could write down how much it rained. And this year, that was particularly important because I did my track experiment. I can tell you, it rained just over an inch, but I still got ridge detail on that track. I think that's pretty impressive. Next slide, please. While I was out there, I did manage to do a couple of interviews. There were some hunters out there, and they were in the camp next to mine. They got there before. I was gone that day. I came back, they were set up. They'd been walking around my camp, and one of them came up to me, because they wanted my campsite. That's where they usually stay. And they said, hey, we're walking around your campsite, and we noticed you have some cameras pointed in at you. This green box. What are you doing out here? I was going to try and lie. Oh, I'm hunting her. And I thought, I'm not going to lie. I told them. I said, well, Bigfoot. And they didn't look at me like I thought they were. And since I'd already mentioned the subject, I thought I'd ask them. You guys have been coming out here. They said they've been coming out there for 40 years. And I asked them, I said, have you guys ever encountered anything strange? Seen anything? One of them said, not here. And I said, okay, well, I'll listen. This was at Mount Hood in the Doofer hunting unit. Happened in 1979. This guy was over 70. He didn't watch television. He didn't get on Bigfoot websites. He was, imagine, just a regular old guy. That's what he was. And you know what I mean. He's not just a regular old. And that's real subjective. Whatever. I wasn't studying old guys. I was studying. Anyway, so he told me back in '79, he and his buddy were out there hunting. They'd set up tree stands. He said it was getting near dark. They were sitting there, and a cow elk came running up. They heard it coming. It stopped in front of them, and it kept going. So they thought, oh, something's running her. What's going on there? They heard movement off to their left. So they figured whatever that was running this elk. Well, it was quiet. After the elk left, it was quiet. Then he said something screamed. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. He said he and his buddy were so scared, they slumped down out of the tree stands, and he said they ran the quarter mile back to their camp. He said they were so scared. He said we were so scared we were laughing. We felt stupid. We're grown men. What the hell are we doing? What is it? What was that? What's going on? Well, they were so scared, they were going to wait till the next day to go back and get their tree stands when it was light. They waited till after noon. They wanted to make sure that sun was up. And we went back, got the tree stands, and then this guy, his name was Will, he got the idea that I'm going to go to where I thought I heard this thing screaming. I want to see if I can find anything. He said he went over to this area. It wasn't far from him. He said it was about, 50 yards or so. And he said, just like this, he said, and I found tracks. Hundreds of tracks. He said they were several different sizes. He said maybe four individuals. He said it looked like these things were just walking around in a circle and just stomping all over the ground. He said the biggest tracks were bigger than his friend's foot. He could put his booted foot in the track and not touch the edges of it. He said this guy was like 6'4". He said this big guy. He described the tracks. He said they looked like human tracks, but they were just, he said they were bigger, they were chunkier. This is the way he put it. Meaning they were broader. They were just massive tracks. And he said it scared him so bad, he said they never went back. He said, I don't know what that was, but I'm not saying it's a Bigfoot, but I don't know what it was, and we didn't go back. And that was the first time I'd ever heard a story about a vocalization that also linked it to tracks. That's the first I heard of it, personally. I thought that was real interesting. Go ahead. Unexpected discoveries is what I call this little section. That's an American marten. Now, if I was out there for 45 days, 65 days with a laser focus on Sasquatch, I'd end up getting real damn disappointed because I haven't found anything yet. It would get real boring, real fast. But I don't go out there. As a matter of fact, very few times did I think about Sasquatch when I was out there because I was too busy tracking a pack of wolves or a black bear. There's a lot to do out there. There's a lot to see. Checking cameras. Me and myself and a friend of mine, Jan King, she was out there for a couple of weeks with me. We scared up this little fella. He jumped right in front of us, got on the snag, and he just sat there and looked at us like this. And I thought, okay, if he's going to stay there, I'm going to take a picture. That's what I do. That's what I did. Jan got some pictures. We thought it was neat, but that's where we left it. We ran into a guy, he was a biologist, worked out there in the Blues for over 40 years. He found out about the picture and he got real excited. He said, I studied martens 40 years. He said, I've only ever seen 2 of them out there. Kind of sounds like a Sasquatch report, 40 years, and this is just a weasel. It's not it's a weasel. But these things were extirpated from that area by people that were trapping fur-bearing mammals like the mink and things like that. So they went locally extinct there. People weren't sure that they were even there anymore. And we scared one up, so they are. And he wrote a little article about it in the Walla Walla Union Bulletin, where he says, in my 40 years of wandering over the Blue Mountains, I've only seen one marten. Most folks will never see one. So for these visitors to locate and photograph this wily, shy omnivore is an instance of right place at the right moment. It's by Mike Denny is his name. And I thought about that. Oh, that was fascinating. So you can find people that have been up there 40 years, they've only seen 2 martens. You can find people hunted that place every summer, every spring and summer for 40 years. And they'll say, I never seen no Bigfoot. I don't know about that. Then you can meet somebody who's up there for 5 minutes and they don't think so. Gosh. Yeah. I was saying, you can meet someone that was up there for 5 minutes and they've seen 6 of them. That doesn't make sense to me. Next slide. Now this is another instance. This was this year. Again, Mike Denny contacted me. He told me that some friends of his at ODFW, they were pretty certain that there were probably only 4 mountain goats up there. They said they hadn't counted them, but they think there are only about 4. Now, I'd seen 10 at once. So I knew there were more than 4. And I told Mike that. And I got this video, which shows 6. Can you play this one, Mantra? And you can see they've got kids. So they're breeding. But they just keep coming. One of them's tagged. It has a red ear tag. So that can be traced back to the individual that tagged the goat and where he tagged it. Mike said he can look that up easily. But he said ODFW would be interested in this video because it shows that there are more than 4 goats out there. So again, like with the marten, I'm out there looking for Sasquatch evidence. But in what I'm doing, I'm also able to provide useful information to people like Mike, to the ODFW, in their efforts, their conservation efforts. I think that's pretty neat. As opposed to just, I found a broken tree and a rock. That happens in the woods. There are like a billion trees out there. They don't look right. What's a tree supposed to look like to you? Well, exactly, so it's done. Next video, or slide. This. Alright, so this is a deed-up pond. I had a camera set up there. I went up there to check it. Came back to my truck, I had my laptop, put the SD card in, and I saw this. Go ahead and play it. That's not me. Now, there's no, whoever that is, and that's a woman, because you can hear, if you listen to it with headphones on a computer, you can hear her talking to a man that's off camera. He tells her, he goes, stop right there. And she goes, here? And he goes, turn around. And she turns around and does her little dance. So, there's no way anybody knew that that was my camera. I didn't tell anyone where my cameras were. I set them up all over the place. So it seems to me that someone found a camera, apparently had a gorilla suit and a Hawaiian shirt and decided to do that. So I don't think I was the intended target, you know. But it made me think, I thought it was funny, but then I thought, there is someone up here with a gorilla suit. There's someone up here with a gorilla suit, you know? Then that made me think, you know? You hear about hoaxes and hoaxers. I don't think that's a malicious, obviously. I mean, look, they weren't trying to convince anybody. It's not the Patterson Gimlin film. But they were playing a trick. How often do they do that? I mean, I caught them doing it on camera once. Have they done it before? Are they still doing it? If you saw that without the shirt, walking 200 meters in front of you across the road, what might you think that was? Those people have a gorilla suit. So, it made me think. Next slide. This was, last year was the eclipse. Now, where I was, it wasn't total. But I had a really good camera, and I got a filter for it. I think it was about 97%. It was as far as it went. But I went up, and I got some pictures of it. Next slide, please. Next slide. That's about as far as it went. This is just an example of recording data. I want to know everything that happens out there. I want pictures of it, I want recordings of it, and I'm writing it down. From the weather to what the sun's doing, moon phases, all of that. It could be significant to somebody or perhaps to me later. You never know. What I want to do is I'm going to write all this up last year and this year in sort of an expedition report format. So it's documented. And I'll have it available if, you know, anybody cares to read it. But I think that's important because that's research. You meet lots of people, they say they're researchers. They go, oh, well, where's your research? Well, I've got a YouTube video and a Facebook post. Okay. You know, if you study mountain lions for the university or whatever, and they're paying for you to study mountain lions, you get done after a month of research, you come back, and they go, oh, what'd you get? You go, well, I made a Facebook post. We paid you how much for that? Well, I'm researching, that's what I do. No. They'll write it out, right? It's a scientific document. Data, that's what everybody wants, data. Even if there's no Sasquatch in it, you never know. And I don't have a Sasquatch yet. The time I've been there, I haven't heard anything. Like I said, I haven't found anything. But as far as I know, the evidence indicates that they were at least there. But it took me 2 years to see a moose. I saw a moose this year. I didn't see a moose last year. So I didn't see a moose last year. Does that mean they're not there? No, it means I didn't see one. I know they're there because I saw one this year. Right? And there are about 60 moose up there. If there are 3 Bigfoot up there, how long is it going to be until I see one? It could be 20, 30 years. Next slide, please. So some conclusions and recommendations based to myself for the next time I do this. Wildlife is abundant up there. You will find tracks, you will find scat, you will see a new animal every day. Same with water. It's really dry, but there's a lot of standing water, plenty of water. There's a lot of berries. Right now the huckleberries are ripe, and they're there in tons. This place is huge. The whole forest is about 100 miles wide by 400 miles long. That's a big place. And you saw that little red box, that's where I was looking. So there's all with another fella, and I want to say it was 1947, 1949, and they got separated, and his friend couldn't find him, and the weather turned. It was was snowing real bad, and the sheriff got involved, and they searched for this boy, and they never found him. And it was a year or maybe two later, some hunters were out hunting, and they found his rifle, and they found his knit cap, and his body was discovered, stuffed under a tree among the roots. And then they found his belt. He used a length of rope as a belt with his hunting knife, the scabbard at any rate. I'm not sure the knife was still in the scabbard, but the scabbard was there with his belt. They found it miles away in a, like I said, on a sandbar in a creek. That's what happened to him.
Definitely a bizarre story, huh?
Yeah. What's that?
If you watch the video.
Oh, well, what I was saying is he came up here every day. According to the research he had done over the years, he was pretty certain that he could have an encounter here at the pond if he came here in July and August. So every day he would get out here, July and August. He'd get here early in the morning, and he'd stay till, later in the evening. He'd leave before it got dark because he was sure he'd have an encounter here. One morning he left his house later than normal because I believe his daughter was having car trouble, and he stayed at home a few extra hours to help her to fix her car. He got out here later than he normally did, and when he got here he found tracks, and he started filming those, and he started casting those. And if you watch it, he's filming the tracks, then he goes, "Oh, I hear the brush popping," and he brings the camera up, and then you hear him go, "Oh, there he goes," and this thing steps out and walks right in front of him, and he takes off after it, and the film ends. But in the book Bigfoot of the Blues, Vance Orchard interviewed him, I think the day after that happened, and he goes into greater detail about events that occurred after the film stopped. But that was in 1992. I think it was August 25th, 1992. But it was here at Deduct Pond. You'll have to check that out. Just Google Freeman footage. You'll see it.
Here we have the habitats of Sasquatch. The notorious Bigfoot. The fierce wild man of the forests. Where is he?